I think the hardest thing about being human is thinking, obviously. And it's also one of the most greatest things, to be able to think. So everything that we think isn't a fixed thing. We believe, maybe not now, but when we're growing up and when we first come into the world of humans, we believe that thinking is a fixed thing. That there is truth in what we think. And we're not taught that thinking is subjective, dependent on everything else. So, say if you described you lived in a windy place, a place with lots of wind and lots of storms, and then you moved to another place, and that place was even stormier and even more winds. And then you moved to another place, and that was even stormier with even more winds. When you went back to the first place, you might not describe it anymore as a really windy, stormy place. You might just describe it as average, a little bit windy. And this is part of the problem with thinking, is because we're taught it's fixed thing, that it's the way it is. It's like we don't encourage in our thinking this flexibility, this ability to see the thinking isn't fixed, things aren't fixed, and it's only relevant, our thinking is only relevant to that particular moment and those particular circumstances. If we were taught that more in thinking, then I think life would be a lot easier for humans. But what we're taught is we're taught that thinking is fixed. And if we're taught thinking is fixed, then obviously things are fixed. And obviously ourself is fixed, because all of those are what we think about. Everything that we come in contact is named: computer, table, chair, radiator, wall, human, other, me, my name, my age, my body. So if we believe thinking is fixed, then we believe that which we think about is fixed. But if we were to see it as a more flexible thing that's always changing, then maybe we'd see ourselves as a flexible thing that's always changing, but not this fixed identity that we make up about ourselves. So most humans walk around with a story about themselves, and they believe this story about themselves. My name is Henrietta, and I am 48 years old, and I have 2 children, and I've had a good life. I'm a poor person. I'm white. I'm from Europe. I'm not very clever. I'm blah, 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 blah. And these things are just something that we describe the body as in comparison to others. So she knows she's European because she's not American, she's not Saudi Arabian, she's not Australian, so she's European. She knows that she's poor in comparison to other people around her. But it's also subjective. If you then put her in India, maybe she'd be rich. She knows she has 2 kids because she doesn't have 8 kids. She knows who she is, that she's that name because she's not another name. But if we saw it more like that it was in relationship to other things, and if those other things changed, then our sense of self and our identity would change, then I think that life would be a lot easier. Humans are always trying to fix their life and fix their story about their life, and they use this as a coping mechanism to avoid fear. And they believe that they can do it in thoughts, so they're always trying to do it in thoughts. They're trying to organize what their life is, what their position is, what their beliefs are. And they're trying to do that in order to feel safe in their environment. And what most humans have never been taught, and what should be like the golden gem of lessons, is your safety actually comes from knowing who you are, which is this moment, rather than a story about yourself in time, because the story about yourself in time is always subject to change and is always something that should be able to change, and is something that's moving and growing and evolving. It's not a stuck thing. And who you are is this moment, which is obvious if you really think about it, because the thoughts about you come and go. Your body is coming and going. It's always changing. Your environment is always changing, being poor or rich. Your height, say, is changing dependent on who you're in relationship to. All your circumstances are changing. But what isn't changing is this moment. That's the one solid thing that's always guaranteed, is it's always this. It's always what's happening. No matter what, it's always this. Everything else comes and goes, but this is always present. Now, what can happen in thoughts and in imagination is you can imagine that it's not this. So you believe that this is something that comes and goes. But if you really pay attention to your experience, you'll notice that it's imagination that this comes and goes. So you imagine that you'll die and this will be gone. You imagine in 10 years' time, it will be a different moment. It won't be this moment. Or you imagine 10 years ago was a different moment from this moment. But your actual experience is, when you pay attention, that it's always this moment, no matter what. And you can run, you can hide, you can think, you can imagine, but it's always this moment. The remembering of that and the realization of that has a freedom to it. I'm not saying you're going to escape the human drama of not having enough money, or having too much money, or being too busy, or not being busy enough, or being lonely, or having lots of friends. I'm not saying you're going to escape the everyday experience of being human, but this shift to remembering that who you are is this moment and not something in time profoundly changes things. And it's this energetic shift. When it's really explored and really seen, it's this energetic movement, and it's really subtle and it's like nothing, but it changes everything. And it's not a belief system. Belief systems come and go, and people will manipulate you over belief systems and play all sorts of games over belief systems, including people into spirituality and in religious groups. They'll try to convince you that their belief system is more right than yours. And this isn't a belief system. It sounds like I'm presenting you a belief system, but check out your experience and see if what I'm pointing to is something beyond a belief system. That who you are is not a person moving in time, but this moment. And try to see something beyond belief system. And remember that. And that's where the freedom is. If it's a belief system, then I can manipulate you, or the other teacher can manipulate you into our way of thinking and get our wants met. We can be the right one, we can be the good one, we can be the enlightened one. When you see that this is nothing to do with a belief system, then it's got nothing to do with the human trading system. And it's got nothing to do with me convincing you of anything, or me having anything over you, or me knowing something more than you. This is fundamental to the human experience, and this is trying to point back to that. But I'm pointing back to it while trying to use words, but it's actually beyond words, and it's not a belief system. That can be super scary though, and that can be too much freedom. So the person is like, hang on, give me some belief systems so I can get to that. But as soon as belief systems get involved, then it becomes about the human bartering system, because belief systems, thoughts, and words are all about humans cooperating, living together, and sharing together, and exchanging together. And non-duality is beyond that. And so as soon as it becomes about a belief system, then it's about an exchange between two humans. And this is beyond that. It's beyond an exchange between two humans. It's remembering something that's prior to words, prior to this belief or that belief. There is no doer, there is no self. All of that's beliefs. What's prior to that? That you have to behave like this, that you have to meditate, that you have to not meditate, that you have to do this, you have to release emotions or not doing that, What is prior to that? And that is too much freedom for the person. The person's like, what to do? I can't do anything with that. And it's scary, and it can make the mind run at 100 miles an hour. And the person can listen to it and hear it in the wrong way and put it into practice in the life of the human, and that's a disaster. So while it does feel overwhelming and it does feel too much, then the human can look at the belief systems and the emotional system of the human person and what the human is seeking for, and it can understand itself better. And through that understanding, it can be a more balanced person, and then maybe this subject can be heard and what the other person could potentially get from this. And while that's in play, then you believe that non-duality is about words and is about getting something, then you're always going to be playing in the human world of bartering. And so just be clear of that, and be clear what you're bartering for. If you're wanting emotional release, if you're wanting to be more balanced, otherwise you're just swept around in the human dynamics, and somebody convinces you of this, and then somebody convinces you of that, and then you believe this, and then you believe it's that, and then you feel confused, and then you don't understand. And that's what non-duality, that's not what non-duality is about. That's about belief systems. Non-duality is remembering the freedom of who you are right here, which is not words. Not words. Words are something that come and go. So what is present beyond words? Beyond imagination. What's here beyond imagination? So if you bumped your head and you forgot everything you knew, you forgot every word, what's present? This presence, this alive presence that's always been there. It's beautiful. This is the freedom, remembering that, and then the movement back to that. On one level, there is this movement back to that freedom of who you are, which is love. And then the human has to still work out the human dramas of being human. It's still got to work out how to survive. It's still got to work out how to build the house, how to get enough money, how to trade with empathy, how to not get yourself into stupid situations, how to not be manipulated by others, how to not manipulate others. But none of that's seen as freedom anymore. What's seen as freedom is what you are, which is this, who you are. And if this is driving your mind crazy, then just find a gentle belief system to follow to help it settle down. So you can do something like emotional release, you could do a therapy, you could understand your body better, you could follow meditation, all these types of things to help calm down the mind. And just see it not in thought. See how your mind wants thought. See how your mind wants a belief system to follow. And know that when you want a belief system to follow, then you're involved in the human bartering system. And then you're going to be giving your power to something else. And when you give your power to something else, then you're subject to manipulation. And when you're subject to manipulation, then you'll begin to feel bad about yourself. You'll begin to not follow your natural flow, which is what a lot of people are already tied up in that drama of that. And they can't understand why they feel so uncomfortable, but it's because they keep giving their power away, because they believe thought is their master. And then they look around and they're convinced by the best person with the best thought the best way to articulate things and the best way to convince someone of something, and then they follow that and they do what the other person says, and they don't quite feel good about themselves, whether it be a partner, which most of the time it is a partner, or whether it be an organization, a company, a work company, or whether it be a spiritual guru. And there is no freedom in that. The freedom is your essence, which is right here, right now. It's not a thought. Thought comes and goes, and you're always going to need someone to convince you of a new thought. What is here prior to thought? This is home. This is where freedom is, and this is a movement to that freedom. If that feels really out of control, then put your attention on that freedom and move your attention to that alive presence that you are.